Hi everybody, welcome back to another Sippin On Sunshine video. This is video number 2, fabric and project prep. We're going to be working on the Sippin On Sunshine quilt beginning to end. I've come up with the schedule. You can download your schedule for free on my website. There'll be a link below. Video 1 is already posted, and this is video number 2, the fabric and project prep. Starting with video number 3, I'm going to try and post the videos on Fridays. So video number 3 will be posted on May 1st, and then our last video, video number 9, will be posted on June 12th. This schedule has us working on a few blocks each week. No rush to this. Take your time. If you end up missing a week, you can go back. And if you're watching these later, after the quilt along has passed, you can just print this out and use it to help you keep track of everything. Let's dive right in and talk about fabric prep. This project, I am working with the fabric kit. I've already taken everything out of the box, and I'll be working with the embellishment kit. And throughout the videos, you'll see the needle minder. This is a great magnetic needle minder. All the products will be linked below for you. The first thing I do with my fabric is I starch it and I press it. I'm going to drop in a video. I recorded that on my cell phone. The sound and the lighting will be a little bit different because it's outside, and you can watch that process. I've got everything laid out outside. I use a spray starch, so I do this outside. I like this faultless heavy finish. I'm going to use a very light spray. If you saturate this, it's going to shrink, and I've looked at how we need to cut these fabrics. Some of them we've got almost just enough to make the cut, so I don't want anything to shrink too much, but I do like to use the starch. It makes the fabric a little more crisp. I think I get a better result on the embroidery machine. I get my can, and when you get a can of this, it's got a red dot. Do you see that red dot? You want to line up the nozzle with the red dot. It's going to make it spray better, and it'll help you get to the bottom of the can, and lightly, very lightly spray. Now if I'm doing a quilt and I have yardage, I'll do this before I cut my yardage, and sometimes I spray it really heavy so it makes the fabric almost like paper. But for this, a lot of these fabrics are going to have Fusible, and I don't want it to shrink too much, so a real light spray will do. Just kind of go back and forth. Just like that. So I'll spray everything. And then I'll look at it and make sure, did I obviously miss something? Make sure it's even. If you get any spots, don't worry about it. It'll come off with water. And then I'm going to put everything on a rack and let it dry. So just drape it over the rack. It's a little breezy today. Hopefully nothing will blow off the rack. And you can fill up the rack and let it dry. And that's how I starch my fabrics for projects. After everything was dry, I brought it inside and I ironed it. As I was ironing everything, what I did was I got the materials needed pages out. This starts on page 5. So you've got page 5, page 6, and page 7. I put everything in order. So as we work with it today to do our cutting, it's going to make it a lot easier. You'll see right here, here's my F1. Here's the F2 right here. These are the fat quarters. It goes by yardage, fat quarter, fat eighth, fat 16th, yardage, fat quarter, fat eighth, fat 16th, and then we have some 5-inch squares. And the borders, binding, and backing, I'm going to show that to you right now. I'm going to be doing that a little bit different. I showed you this in the previous video, how I make a bag for each of the blocks. If you didn't see that, I make a bag for each of the blocks. I've used these before. I put some label tape over it and I reuse it. You'll see this says Patriotic Home Roof. I've been using these bags since the Star Spangled Beauty quilt. I've used them several times. Make your bags ahead of time. Here's my borders, my binding, and my backing. A couple items of note with this. I'm going to take everything out and show you. In your instructions, it tells you you get a 1/4 yard of this fabric for the inner border. In the fabric kit, you get a fat quarter. There's instructions here about it, showing you how to lay this out and how to cut for the border strips. I'm not going to cut these until the end. A lot of times I like to cut my border strips wider. I may end up ordering more fabric for this. I'm going to think about that. I'm going to set that aside for now. It's going to go back in the bag. My outer border fabric is here, also not cut yet. I'm not cutting the borders and the backing and the binding until the end. The backing, the reason I haven't cut the backing is look at this fabric. It is so pretty. I'm probably going to save this to use for something else. It's not fabric hoarding, it's fabric collecting. This is really pretty. I'd like this on the front of something, not necessarily on the back. I'll probably pull something else for the backing. And then the binding, I'm not going to cut until the whole quilt top is done. Then I'm going to check my measurements of my quilt top. Then I'll cut the binding. For now, all of this is going to go back in the bag. Another reason why you may not want to cut these items yet until the end is if you're not sure if you're going to make the quilt as shown as a square, or if you're going to change it to a ladder quilt, or maybe you're not sure you have enough time to finish it right now. Maybe as you're going through the project, you discover that, hey, I want to make a couple of mini quilts instead of a big quilt. That way you haven't cut your fabric yet for the borders, backing, and binding. You have more options. If you absolutely 100% know what you want to do, you can cut it ahead of time. But I like to wait until the end to cut these. As we're cutting our fabric, you'll notice there's green hearts by some of the fabrics. This means it needs Fusible on the back, and some of the fabric cuts have a different measurement here in the block by block size. I am doing the block by block quilting, the background quilting. If you've purchased the background quilting bundle, that's what you're doing. So you want to watch out for these items. I went through and circled those. There aren't very many here, and then here for the border, but I have a note on that about the inner border fabric. I just told you about that. We have some options for Fusible. Kimberbell has Fusible backing. It's great. I love my Kimberbell Fusible backing. It's on a smaller roll. I tend to keep this for smaller projects like the Hoop Studio items, perfectly pieced, home sewn, some of the mini quilts, mug rugs, smaller things that I'm working on. I like to use this. Larger products, to be more economical, I buy Pellon SF101. I'll put information on that below. You can buy it online. If you have a Hobby Lobby by your house, check and see if they have it on sale. Last time I purchased some, I got it from Hobby Lobby. They only had 10 yards and it was on sale, so I bought 10 yards. So I have a little bit left on this bolt, and then I have another pile. I'll be using the Pellon SF101. There's a couple other items you're going to need. I'm going to go over those really quick, and then we're going to do all of our fabric cutting. Kimberbell project batting. I love my Kimberbell project batting. I thought I had a thing of Kimberbell project batting. It turns out it was Flexi foam. Oops. So since we're starting, I'm going to use this Missouri Star Quilter's Best Blend batting. I'm a long arm quilter. I have some batting. I like this batting when I need something really thin. This is very similar to Kimberbell project batting. I have used Hobbs 80/20 before, but that's puffy and it tends to cause some trouble with the embroidery machine. So for my batting for this project, I'm going to use the Missouri Star. You can see how thin that is. That'll be great for this quilt. Kimberbell makes a light mesh cutaway. It's really good quality. I like this. I don't have to be as careful with my iron. You can see I don't have a lot of it. I do a lot of other embroidery projects. I've been using this HBI No Show Mesh medium weight. This comes in a 15 by 25 size, which is good for my larger hoop. I can buy a big jumbo roll. I've actually used quite a bit off of this already. It is extremely similar to Kimberbell's light mesh cutaway. The biggest difference is this is lighter and you don't have to be as careful with your iron. When I'm ironing and I'm using this HBI, I have to be really careful not to get my Oliso iron on it if I have it on the cotton setting, because this will melt. I've never had the Kimberbell light mesh cutaway melt on me before. I am going to be using the HBI for this because you can see I have more of it and I actually have another roll of it. We're also going to need a medium cutaway. I have the same brand, the HBI medium cutaway. And then I have some Kimberbell stabilizers here. We're going to need a wash away stabilizer. Now this is the regular wash away. It's not the sticky back, it's not the topping. So this is just wash away stabilizer. You're going to need some of that. You will need some of the wash away topping. I have plenty of that. And here's my big thing of Flexi foam that I thought was project batting, so I have plenty of Flexi foam. These items will be linked below for you. Most of them I think are found on the same page, so I may have a link for just stabilizers where you can go and get all your stabilizers and drop them all in your cart and buy them all at the same time. Anything I'm using like Capella and SF101, I'll also put information about it below. As you're getting your fabric ready, you can also prep your batting. I'm going to do all the fabric first, and then as I work through sorting these, when you go through your instructions, you'll see each block has a measurement at the end, like this is applique block pennant, and it tells you that we're trimming the block to 6.5 inches square. So my batting for this block needs to be a 7.5 inch square of batting. You want to add 1 inch to whatever the finished trim size is for each of the blocks. What I like to do is I look at these. This is the pennant block. I'm going to find my bag that says pennants, and then on the bag I can make a note that I need batting. You can abbreviate it PB for project batting. I was going to do that, but it makes me think of peanut butter, so I'm not going to do that. 7.5 inches square. This is going to help because we're going to cut and prep all the fabric, and I like to put everything in the bags, and then I go back and I cut all the batting. So if you want to take a minute right off the bat at the beginning and flip through, look for each block, Sippin On Sunshine, go to the end, and it tells us that this block will measure 8.5 by 4.5. This is one of the blocks that we're going to cut with different sizes of orange pop rulers. That's why you see the two different sizes. I'll show you how to do that. So 8.5 by 4.5 means my batting has to be 9.5 by 5.5. And something else I like to do, because I like to try and work as efficiently as possible, I'll get all the batting measurements and then I'll look and see, do I have a bunch that measure 7.5, 9.5, 6.5, and I'll cut big strips and then cut them down to size rather than cutting one square at a time. If you notice a common width between all of your batting, cut a big strip and then cut them down to fit each of your blocks. It'll save you some time. I'm going to go through my instructions, look for all those trim sizes, like here the lemon 4.5, I need 5.5 for my batting. Put that on my bag and set all my bags aside. If you have room, if you've got a big long table, maybe a folding table, a long ironing board, if you can line up your bags so you can see all of the names of your blocks, when you go to sort your fabric, it goes a lot faster. I have all my batting measurements on my bags. The one thing I noticed is when you get to the grass at the end, when I add an inch, I get 3.5 by 9.5, and the instructions say to cut 3 by 9. I'm going to cut mine larger. It makes it easier. As far as measurements for all the blocks, please go through your instructions, look at it, and add an inch. I would hate to show you all these and find out that I did one of these wrong because I'm hungry and it's lunchtime. I'm actually going to set these aside, grab something to eat, and then come back and cut fabric. Don't cut fabric on an empty stomach. Let's start cutting our fabric. F1, I'm not going to cut on camera because I can't get the whole thing on the screen with the ruler. So let's start with F2. Once you've done a few of these, you can go back and get this F1, it'll be no problem. Looking at F2, you can see it says you should have 1 fat quarter, and it has a small picture of the fabric. I've got my fat quarter here off to the side. We're going to be cutting for the Sippin On Sunshine background and the basket one background. I'm going to grab those bags. I made a bag for Sippin On Sunshine, and the baskets, I put basket 1, 2, and 3. So what I'm going to do to make sure I don't confuse myself is just make a 1, a 2, and a 3, and then as I'm cutting the fabrics and putting them in, I'll use a clip and I'll clip the number to the fabrics to make sure I keep all of that sorted. I like to cut each piece, add the Fusible, put it in the bag, but be careful, make sure you let it cool before you put it in the bag because it's going to be hot. If you like to cut everything first and then sort, you can do that. I find it easier for me if I just do one thing at a time. You can see right here, there's a little picture of it. F2, we're going to be cutting 8.5 by 10.5 and 6.5 by 10.5. When I see that, here's what I like to do. I'll add up 6.5 and 8.5, which is 15. So I'm going to cut 10.5 by 15. I'm also going to cut a 10.5 by 15 inch piece of my fusible. Here's my fat quarter. I want to have a straight edge for my cutting. So I'm going to make sure that's nice and flat. You can see this edge is not straight. I've got the selvage over here. I'm going to grab a long ruler. This is a Creative Grid 6.5 by 24.5, and I want to get a straight edge. You can see this is really crooked. Now I know by the picture I'm going to have extra. We're not using a lot of this, so I'm not worried about cutting off for that straight edge. It's going to make trimming easier. Let's go ahead and cut that. Now I have a nice clean edge. I'm going to flip this around, and I need to cut 10.5 by 15. So if your papers are in front of you, it's like this. So for me, it's like this because I'm standing over here. I have my pellon here on the bolt. It's yardage. I'm actually going to lay this underneath the fabric and cut it at the same time. Here's my fusible. Here's my fabric. I'm just doing this so I can cut it at the same time. Now this does not have a straight edge either, so I can actually take a second and cut a straight edge at the bottom. I should have done that first. The straighter the edges are, the easier it is going to be to trim. We'll do the same thing. I'm going to line up along that straight edge I just cut with my ruler, straight along that, and then I'm going to even this out. Now when it's facing me, I have two straight edges. So I can lay the fusible back down and lay my fabric down and smooth it out. You can cut one thing at a time. I've been cutting fabric for a while. I'm okay cutting through both layers. Make sure it's nice and smooth, and then I'm going to double check my measurements. 10.5, 15. This is 6.5 inches wide. How do you measure 10.5? You get another ruler. Here's another ruler. I'm going to line this up along the 4 inch because I know I need 4 inches. And then I only need to go 15 inches up. This ruler, the one is down here. I'm going to spin it this way. I'm going to find the 15, line it up here. So 1 to 15, 6.5. I need to add 4 inches. I can scooch this over and then just check. And with this piece of fabric, you can see you're going to have extra. So if you want to cut it a little bit wider, you can, and even a little bit bigger, you can. It just gives you a little bit of leeway. You have that with this fabric. We're only cutting 2 pieces from it. I'll go ahead and I'll line it up though. I'll cut it exactly. So I'm going to check and just slide this up. I'm checking to make sure it stays at the 4, which it does. And here's my 15. So now I have 15. And then you want to slide this up so the rulers are going to touch. Nice and smooth. Move my rulers. Close your blade. Don't leave your blade open. You'll cut your finger at some point and it's really painful. I'm going to check and make sure I've cut through everything. That looks good. And I've got a little piece of the fusible that's stuck here. And the way I have this cut with the pellon, this side that's facing up that's touching the fabric is the fusible side. You can feel it. It's bumpy. So this is ready to go over to the iron. I'm going to go ahead and press the iron and go through the fusing process. It does give you directions. See how it says cover with a thin, damp press cloth? I don't do that. I've actually never done that. I just iron it. I have it on the linen setting, which is the next to the hottest setting. And I usually like to start on the back. The reason I start on the back is this gives me a chance to look for anything. Did I accidentally get any threads caught in there? Like, is there a piece of red thread like I just pulled off? A dog hair, an eyelash, something that's going to show through right there. There's a little black piece of something. Brush that off. There's a thread there. Brush that off. It looks good. And then I press my iron. I count to 8, 8, 8, and I overlap. So if this is my iron, when I put it down next, I'll overlap it a little bit. I'll do this side, and then I flip it over and I do the front side, and then if I notice any iron impressions, I just kind of gently move my iron back and forth after I've fused it, and that takes care of it. I'm going to go put the Fusible on. Here's my piece of fabric with the Fusible on the back. I'm going to take the extra, fold it up, put it in the fabric kit box. That way, if I end up needing any extra at any point throughout the project, I know where to find it, and then if I don't use any of my extra fabric, when I get to the end of the project, I have it all sorted and separated into the box. So I have my 10.5 and 15. I need to cut that because I need a piece that's 6.5 and 8.5. I'm going to turn that toward me. 6.5 is easy to cut. My ruler is 6.5 inches wide. I can go ahead and cut that. Line up the straight line with the straight edge of the fabric. Make sure it's straight, straight. There's my 6.5 by 10.5, and then this should be 8.5, 6.5, number 2, perfect. So I've got my 2 pieces. We've got our 6.5, 10.5, and our 8.5, 10.5. Let's grab our bags. The 6.5, 10.5 goes in the Sippin On Sunshine. Put that in that bag. And then we have the 8.5, 10.5. This is basket number 1. There's my little number 1. That's going to go in the basket bag. We're ready to go to our next piece of fabric. As I work through, I like to cross stuff off. That way I know it's done. The next is the yellow check fat quarter. This is for our pinwheels. And you'll notice there's no hearts next to it. So there's no Fusible needed for these. We just did F2. We're on to F3 for our pinwheels. 3, 6, 9, 5, 10, 15, 20. I'm going to start by cutting 9 by 20, and then I'll subcut it down. So that's how I got 9 by 20. It's the fabric for our pinwheel blocks. We don't need Fusible on this one, so I don't have to worry about that. If all you have is a small ruler, what I would do is use the lines on your cutting mat and try and get it straight. You can see this piece of fabric is not straight. See how it lines up down here? And now you can see that line. Shift it. I'm just going to use that line kind of as my guide. It's much easier to cut, at least I think, when you have a straight edge. If you want to cut measuring crooked, you can. A print like this, if you're particular, you want to be sure that you're cutting at the same point. The little gingham squares, I'm not that particular. I'm going to line this up here. Let's say this is the only ruler I have, a 6.5 by 12.5. Now let me just go to the top. I can bring that over a little bit. I'm trying not to waste fabric, but I need a straight edge. Starting here, I'm just kind of sliding and looking. That's better. So I'm going to start down here, and then what I'm going to do is cut part way. Keep my blade there. Slide. I'll cut a little bit more. Slide. All the way to the top. Now I have a straight edge. I've got my straight edge over here. I'm going to cut 9 by 20. So toward me, I need 9 inches, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5. I need 2.5 inches. Whole numbers, half numbers. Here's my 2.5. Line that up. And then just check. That looks good. This is where I want it. I only need to go 20 high. This is a fat quarter. It's going to be about 20 high. If I line up the bottom of the ruler with the selvage, because we're not going to use the selvage, and then I look at the ruler, I have about 21.5 inches. So I'm not going to worry about measuring like I just did with the other one. I'm just going to cut straight. So I'm cutting a 9-inch wide strip top to bottom. And then I could even off the straight part in a minute. I know this is going to be extra. I'm going to fold this and go put it in the box. Let's make sure this edge is straight. I have 2 straight edges. Any line on the ruler, line it up. I'm lining up right along here. And I'm just going to straighten off this top part. Here's what I have, 9 by 20. I need 3 3-inch strips. I'm going to grab my long ruler. We're going to cut the 3 3-inch strips. Line it up carefully, 3 inches. And 3 inches. This will be 3 inches because I cut at 9. The next thing we want to do is subcut these into 5 inches because we need 3 by 5. You can cut 1 strip at a time, or if you're comfortable, you can cut them all at a time. If you're going to cut all 3 at once, what I would do, take 1 strip and 2 strip, and you would want to line these up exactly, and you want to flatten it all the way out, which I can't do because I'm out of space because I'm doing this on camera. You don't want this, which is what I have going on. So you would want to do this if you have enough room to flatten it all out, and then you would cut 5, 5, 5, and 5. I'm a little tight on space. I have a 5-inch square ruler, makes it a little bit easier, and we need 3 by 5. So I'm going to cut all of these into the 5-inch segments, just like this. So there's 1. Line up a line on your ruler with the straight edge. 2, 3, and you're going to get 4 with a little bit extra if you're using the fabric kit. 4. Here's the extra. Stuff like this, I actually have a little container by my sewing machine, and I use this if I'm cleaning the sewing machine or I'm testing or changing threads or need leaders or enders, so I just chuck that in there. I need to do that for the remaining 2 strips. Another way you can cut these, you could have done this when you have 3 strips, 1, 2, and then you could have put the 3rd one up here, 5, 5, 5, and 5. Again, I'm squished for space. I'm doing 1 at a time. I have all of these cut. You can see it's pieces 2, 4, 6, and 8 for pinwheel 1, 2, and 3. I'm going to make myself a note. I'm just going to put yellow check pieces 2, 4, 6, 8 for pinwheels 1, 2, and 3. I have 1 bag for all my pinwheels. This will be enough to help me remember. You can always refer back to the beginning, but I find it easier when you're getting ready to work on all your blocks. If you've made notes, you think you'll remember, but I think this block is near the end. It is. This is one of the last blocks we're going to do. I'm not going to remember by the time we get to it. Grab my bag, put this in here. You can clip it if you want and keep them all together into the bag. Put that aside. I'm going to cross that off. F4 is the same thing. It's a fat quarter. It's for pinwheel 1, 2, and 3. It's pieces 1, 3, 5, and 7. If you're comfortable cutting fabric, you can put F3 on top of F4 and cut them all at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and cut F4 off camera because it's exactly the same. Next up is F5. F5 is the first piece of fabric we're going to work with today. That's a fat 8. You can see it's skinnier, but it's just as long. It's a fat 1/8 of fabric. For this one, we need 8.5 wide, and then we have a 10.5 plus 8.5. I'm just going to cut an 8.5 inch wide strip. That's going to be the easiest way. I'm going to flip this around toward me so the selvage is at the top. I actually have an 8.5 inch ruler. This is 8.5 by 24.5. You can see that this is pretty much 8.5. It's fairly straight on the side. I'm just going to leave a little bit extra here, cut a little bit extra off here, and then I need a piece that's 10.5 and a piece that's 8.5. Let's go ahead and straighten out the top. Make sure we have a clean edge over at the top so I can measure correctly. Grab the long ruler again. See, we're going a little bit faster. 19. Double check my math. 10.5 plus 8.5. 10 plus 8 is 18. Half and half is 1. 19. I always double check my math. Sometimes I even get a calculator out for what I think is simple math because I know myself and sometimes I make mistakes. Here's my extra. Now I can cut a piece of fusible to match. This is another way you can cut your fusible since I didn't cut it the same time I was cutting my fabric. And you can see I've got kind of an oddball piece here. I'm just going to set that off to the side right now and I'll trim it off. Lay it on top of the fusible, line up the bottom here and the side over here, and then I'm going to grab my ruler and trim. And then I'm going to trim the extra off. This really isn't the best way to do this because I'm not left-handed. You can see I'm kind of crossing over, but it's okay. This I'm going to keep. You know you're going to need some smaller pieces of fusible. Just going to set that off to the side. Pull my ruler down, cut across the top here. And then I can take this over to the iron and go ahead and fuse it before I cut this into the 2 pieces. Here's my piece of fused fabric. I have a little overage on the fusible there and there. When that happens, sometimes it ends up fused to the ironing board. No worries, I just clean it off. We need a piece that's 8.5 by 10.5. Starts at 0 here, 10.5. Line that up straight on the bottom. And this top half needs to be 8.5, 8.5. Looks good. The 8.5 by 8.5 is for our bluebird block. It's the background. If you want, you can label this background and put it in the bag. When you look at your instructions, I can see that it's the background. It's the biggest piece of fabric. I don't feel like I need to make a note about that. I'm not going to confuse it with any of the other pieces for this block, so I'm going to go ahead and slide it into the bag. And then this other piece is basket 3 background. Number 3, you know it's going to be background because it's the biggest piece, and it's as big as that piece we already cut for basket 1. It's ready to go. Go ahead and slide that into your bag. That was F5. F6 is cut exactly the same, and it does say to put Fusible. It's for basket 2 and the refreshments background. I'm going to go ahead and do that off camera. Let's move to F7 because F7 has one of these special block by block sizes. Here's your F7. When you go across the row in your instructions, you're either going to cut this piece 4.5 inches square or 5 inches square. I'm going to use the background quilting, so I'm going to cut it 5 inches square. If you're not doing the block by block quilting, if you're putting together the whole top without quilting and then you're going to quilt it with clear blue tiles or send it to a long armor, you can cut that piece 4.5 inches square. Since I'm doing block by block quilting, I need to cut this piece 5 by 5. Here's your cutting diagram for that. This blue right here lets you know that that's the block by block size. So if you weren't cutting block by block, you refer back to the fabric requirement page right there that we were just looking at, and you can cut it to 4.5 inch square. This fabric only needs Fusible on the 8.5 inch square and not on the 5 by 5. So I'll go ahead and cut myself 8.5 inch square. I have an 8.5 inch wide ruler that's shorter. This is 8.5 by 12.5. You can see your piece of fabric is wider than 8.5. I'll go ahead and measure my 8.5. It's relatively straight at the bottom. I have a lot of rulers. I've spent years collecting rulers. Watch for holiday sales, Black Friday, New Year's, that kind of thing. If you get a gift certificate, you don't know what to buy rulers. You'll always use them. I need to put Fusible on the back of that. And then my second piece I need is 5 inch square. Measure my 5 inch square. This goes in the box. The 5 inch square is filler block 4. Here's my filler block bag. I'm going to put a number 4 on it. I think I left the filler blocks off the schedule. We'll work them in. Filler blocks are really easy and they're fast. We'll work them in near the end. Don't worry about it. We may even do them when we're doing the borders and assembly and embellishments. I'll make myself a little note that we're going to work them in at some point. All the filler block is background quilting. Super easy. This piece is for our strawberry block. That's the background. You can put a sticky note on it that says background if you want, but it's going to be your biggest piece. All you do is continue working like this with the rest of your fabrics. Watch for the hearts for your Fusible and watch for the ones that have block by block. When you cut this one, this is your big piece. How I like to cut this is I'll actually cut this section first. So a 10.5, and then I'll add up 12.5, 8.5, 6.5. I'll cut that as one piece. Then I'll cut this piece. These two you can cut together, 6.5, 8.5, 6.5, 8.5, and then cut this. All of this has Fusible. If you want, before you cut all these pieces, you can just put Fusible on the back. 10.5 plus 6.5, 16.5 by however tall it is when you add up all these numbers on the side, and then you'll have some extra Fusible on the back. I'm actually going to cut pieces as I indicated. So this piece, this piece, this piece, this piece. Put Fusible on the back and then subcut this and this. I'm really big on saving time. This piece here, 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 this one, this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. All of these that I've circled, you're only using one cut of fabric from it. Do you see that? I'm actually not going to even cut them. I'm going to see which ones need Fusible, put Fusible on the back, and stick the whole piece in the bag. Let's look at the list. Here they all are, and I circled all the ones that only need one little piece out of what they call a fabric scrap. It's a charm square. F23 is going to need some Fusible. I'm going to set that aside. I'm going to put it right side down, back side up. That's just for me. F25, right here, basket 3 label. It doesn't need anything. I need to put this with my basket 3. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it's ready to go. We're only going to use a small piece for applique, but you can lay it down, do the applique, and then trim it. If you want to cut it, you're cutting a 2-inch square. Why bother cutting a 2-inch square? We're going to do the embroidery and trim it all away, and then you can save the extra, save yourself a step. 26, it's the yellow with the polka dot. It's going to need Fusible. Now, if you want to save on Fusible, cut these down and only use a little bit of Fusible. 27, filler block 5. 28 is filler block 1. 29 is filler block 2. I need to go ahead and number these and put them in the bag with the filler blocks. 30 is one that has more than one cut and it needs Fusible. I'm going to put that over here to the side, right side down. 31 has more than one cut, only part of it needs Fusible. So I want to make sure that I do that. I don't want to put Fusible on the back of anything that doesn't need Fusible. It just makes it thicker and harder to work with. Put that over there. 32, 33, 34. Strawberry 1, strawberry 3, bluebird wingtip. 32, 33, and 34. Those are the last of my fabric scraps. I don't have to add Fusible. I just need to put these in the bag. With these, you can differentiate. Put a 1 on this one and a 3 on this one. Although my guess is when you look at the instructions, it's easy to tell which one's which. But I'll go ahead and mark them since I'm here. So we'll mark 1 and 3, and then I'll put these in the bag with my strawberry. And this one is bluebird wingtip. I need to put that in the bag with the bluebird. And now these that I have set aside, I have to put Fusible on the back. And I need to be careful with this one, check one, because I only need Fusible on a piece of it. I would go back here and look at the diagram, see which ones that I need to cut and which ones just need the Fusible, and then put them in the bag. So we have F24. We actually need to cut this into 2 pieces, 2 by 2 squares. Here's where something like this comes in handy, or I save all my little scraps. I have Fusible scraps. I just put them in a bag and I can use smaller pieces. We need a 2 by 2 and a 2 by 2. That's 2 by 4. This has inked edge on it, so the jagged edge. So I'll give myself a little bit more than 2, a little bit more than 4. Go ahead and cut that. This is extra. I'll put that back in the box. This little piece is going to be scrap, or you can use it for cleaning, or if you save all your scraps and stuffed pillows, you can use it for that. I'm going to look through my pile and see if I have anything that's the right size for the back of this piece. That's close enough. I'm going to go ahead and fuse that on the back and then cut this in half so I have my 2 squares. These go in the soda bottles. Soda bottle label 1, soda bottle label 2. They're the same size. I don't think they need a sticky note. I'm going to go ahead and find that bag and put these inside. I just cut this white on white. This is actually for the picnic plate, not for the soda bottles. The soda bottles are 500 COCR, which is a coconut cream solid. I either misplaced it, threw it somewhere, don't have it, stuck it in the wrong bag. I'm not worried about it. It's going to look fine for the soda bottle labels. Looking at this, the fabric scrap for the picnic plate, F23, so that's your white on white. I need a 3-inch square. I probably don't have a 3-inch square. I probably have a 2.5. I have about a 2 3/4 inch square. I think this is going to be enough. You know how applique works. There's always extra. I'm going to put Fusible on the back of this and go ahead and stick it in for the picnic plate. I'll know what happened when I get there. I'll put a note on it. Probably at some point I'll find that coconut cream scrap. Here's my little note. It should be 3 by 3 picnic plate. I'm going to put it in the picnic bag. That away. I'm going to go ahead and do the rest of my fabric off camera. Take a little extra time. Make sure I don't make any more mistakes. Let's go ahead and look at the embellishments. Here's the embellishment kit. I tend to like to keep this all together until we get to the end when we need embellishments, or if there are pieces that are used for each block, I'll go ahead and cut them and put them in the block bag. On page 10, you've got the cutting diagrams for your embellishments. You don't get a lot of leeway with your embellishments. See the clear vinyl? There's not a lot of extra. Same with the mylar, the tulle. All of these are pretty tight cuts, I'd say, with the exception of this. These items I am going to cut off camera but you can tell by looking at them, they're cut exactly the same way as your fabric. You've got everything labeled, it's drawn out. On page 8, it details where everything needs to go. So here's your clear vinyl, mylar, tulle, micro velvet. You can see how many pieces, what size. When I work on these, I'm going to have both of these pieces in front of me because I can see everything printed out here, and then I have my cutting diagram here. Make sure you cut your embellishments, put them in the bag. When you go down this page to stabilizers, we've got our Flexi foam, a couple of cuts of the Flexi foam, and then the wash away topping I'm not going to cut until we need it. It's kind of crinkly, you can tear it really easily, so I'm going to wait until we need that. But I will cut the Flexi foam, put it in the bag. I'll cut all my batting, put it in the bag, and make sure I have everything ready for all of my blocks. The biggest tips that I have is not to work too crowded and not to let it get messy, which is what happened to me when I was doing the fabric scraps, which is why I misplaced one and cut the wrong fabric. It's not crucial. If something like that happens, find something similar. I know I have scraps of off-white fabric that would work, so I'm not worried about that miscut. If you make any big cutting mistakes, maybe you do something with this big piece of fabric and you feel like you don't have anything that's going to be an appropriate swap, order some extra fabric, go into a quilt shop, have them help you pick something out. It's never the end of the world. Don't worry about it. Thank you so much for joining me today for video number 2, the fabric and project prep. When I come back for video number 3, which I'm planning on posting on May 1st, if for any reason that's not going to happen, look in the community tab on my YouTube page, or you can join my Facebook group. Link is below. You've got to answer the security question. Let me know if you found this video helpful or not. Please leave me a comment below. Coming up on the channel is going to be projects from the Cottage Garden Bella box. I also have playlists for all the subscriptions, applique of the month, Hoop Studio, and Perfectly Pieced. We're also working on all of the home sewn mini quilts, and there's going to be a lot more Kimberbell to come. We're going to start diving into some older projects as soon as we work through this. Thank you again for watching. I'll see you next time.